One of my big hopes for Splatoon 3 is for Nintendo to make each of the weapon classes more distinct, and I think one of the best ways to do this is to add passives, small little buffs that apply to each weapon in a certain class, to be able to set them apart, including the new Splatoon 3 bows. So today, we're going to be going over passives, why I think they're a great idea for the game, and what each weapon class should get. There's timestamps in the description if you want to jump around to a certain one. And by the way, I'm on the road to 10,000 subscribers and trying to hit the goal by the end of the summer. If you enjoyed today's video and want to help me reach that goal, I appreciate it a ton. And with that being said, let's get into it. First up is chargers, and I think chargers right now, at least the well-balanced ones, are put in a position to where they can put out a lot of pressure, but they have a hard time painting, and that's completely fair. But the one downside that's really been hurting chargers, especially the regular ones of Firefin and the Reg Charger, is the special output is abysmally low. But how do we fix this problem? Because painting is how you build specials. Well, with the passive ability, whenever chargers get a kill with their main weapon, not with their sub or special, they should get an additional 10 points built towards their special compared to normal. Now, this might not sound like a lot, but keep in mind the explosion an enemy makes when they die already does paint a good bit, so it's 10 points being added on top of that for any kind of kill you get. And I think this makes it so if you play Charger really well and you do get those picks, you are rewarded by getting that higher special output. But if you're someone who doesn't get a lot of picks with the weapon, you don't get those additional specials. So it's something that really rewards good players of the weapon class and fixes one of its main problems. Next up is Splatlings, and this is an obvious one, but Splatlings really should have a higher base run speed, even without charging or firing the weapon, than other weapon classes. And you might say, oh well, this isn't a problem because you can just stack run speed. Well, A, Splatlings are stuck running a bunch of run speed on their sets normally, so the class doesn't have a lot of gear freedom. But B, what about Salmon Run and normal single player? Playing Splatling in those modes feels absolutely terrible because you're just so slow. So I think having a better base mobility speed, maybe around the equivalent of 1.5 mains of run speed, would really help the class just feel way better, not just in multiplayer where you get more gear freedom, but also in these single player modes where it can really claim that idea as a backline that can move. I think it just adds a ton to the weapon class, and it's something Splatlings have needed for a long time. Next up is rollers, and while the Dynamo roller is a slight exception, for all of the other rollers, being stealthy is a big part of their gameplay, and I think a great way to enhance that would be by making rollers a little bit quieter than other weapons. Now this could be done in two ways. It could be done to where it's just swimming around is a bit quieter, not as good as Ninja Squid, but somewhere around there. Or they could make it so the main weapon, the flicks it makes and stuff, are more quiet, so it's hard to detect the weapon when it starts to pop out and shoot. I'm not sure which of these are better, or maybe they could do both, but having rollers be a quieter weapon class I think really cements their idea as sharkers, aggressive, stealthy weapons that really have to be careful to make their way in a battle. And now we have Sloshers, and this one was actually a pretty difficult one to come up with because the X-Slosher and Blob have completely different playstyles compared to the normal 3 Sloshers, so I wanted to have something that could benefit all 5 of them. But then I realized what's something every Slosher really benefits from: jumping. None of the Sloshers have any form of RNG, and it's really helpful for arcing their shots. So what if Sloshers could jump slightly higher, around 1.5 times base height? I think this would be a great idea for the weapon class, as it can allow you to get some better angles and really take advantage of, well, being a Slosher, regardless of if you're a longer range or shorter range bucket. You would still be able to short hop by tapping B, it would purely be something that adds to your maximum jump height, that way you can use it for situations where you need just a little bit more reach or a little bit more height. Dualies are going to be an obvious one. They're going to gain around 1.5 main of ink res at all times, because Dualies right now, their main issue, the reason you don't see them too often, is because touching enemy ink for a tiny little bit, you know, like when you dodge roll, ends up getting you killed faster by main power-up weapons, and in general just really slows down that mobility aspect. In order for Dualies to really take full advantage of its rolls, I think it needs a form of ink resistance. Now, pure ink immunity would be way too strong for the dodge rolls and just leave them as a really broken option. So keeping on a bit of ink res basically means that if you do dodge roll spam for long enough, you will still take damage. So I think it's just a little bit more balanced in pure ink immunity and still gives players the opportunity to actually use their dodge rolls. Alright, so for blasters, a lot of people are going to say removing jump RNG, but I wouldn't consider this a weapon class passive because it's on a ton of different weapons already, including, the entire classes of chargers and sloshers, so I don't really think it fits super well for that. But instead, we're going to be taking another approach to the problem it has that's similar to Charger, which is it really needs to get kills, doesn't paint very much, and has a pretty low special output. Rather than trying to fix its special output or paint, we're instead going to really focus on their idea of being Slayers by giving them a reduced respawn time of 1 second. It's a small amount, but it'll really add up over the course of a match, especially if you're a really aggressive blaster player, and I think it's something this class could really use in the next game. Here we go. Time to step into real controversial territory. I'll just be straight up. I think Brellas should have a lifesteal mechanic. Now, I know that sounds drastic, but let me explain. Brellas are really dependent on stalling and being able to stay alive, and over the course of patches, both Reg Brella and Tenebrella have gotten reduced damage, and Undercover doesn't actually have the ability to deal damage, so Brellas really are more about stalling and trying to survive, but I think it puts a lot of emphasis on the shield itself. So I want to take a little bit of power away from the shield and more power back to the shots themselves. The way I think this should work is if your shield is not destroyed, including when it's launched, if you hit opponents, 10% of the damage you deal will recover your HP. It's an incredibly minor amount to keep it from being broken, and it's something that only applies when your shield is active. So the normal counterplay of breaking Brella shields is something that will completely remove this passive from even affecting the weapon, which I think is fair counterplay. If this ends up being a bit too broken, I think they could slightly reduce Tenebrella's shield HP and normal Brella's shield regeneration. But outside of that, I don't see there being many problems, and it would reward Brella players for dropping the shield and hitting shots, rather than just holding down the shield button. In terms of a rework, I think this is something that could really benefit the class as a whole. Next up are the shooters, which are both the largest class, having spray shooters, short range, mid range, and even a little bit of long range shooters, and is also the most basic and common class you'll see, so they would need a pretty accessible passive that people could understand very easily, and I think the best one for them is a slight swim speed bonus, probably around 1 main's worth. And I think this is great as all shooters benefit from mobility, especially the shorter range ones. But also, Splatoon is about mobility, and because shooters are one of the first classes people experience, it just makes the game feel a little bit faster when you start out. And swimming is also something that's essential to playing the game, so it's great to introduce the newcomers as this really strong movement option. So having it be just that little bit faster continues to enforce the idea of you need to be taking advantage of this as much as possible. So it's a nice beginner passive that people can understand, and it works for all of the shooters. And for the last of the non-Splatoon 3 classes, we have the brushes, and this one's pretty simple. I think they should have a mobility bonus when rolling through enemy ink. Since brushes do flank and play behind people quite a lot, especially ink brush, I think having this mobility bonus would be great for it. It would definitely be a minimal amount, around 5%, but I think it would be great for incentivizing brushes to get behind people and really play that distraction, you have to pay attention to me playstyle. And I think it's a great bonus for both of those weapons. I will say that if this does happen, Octobrush should absolutely get the perma ink res effect that Ink Brush has when rolling through enemy ink, because that's a big quality of life thing, and it would lead to Octobrush having a similar problem to Dualies. If Octobrush was able to play more aggressively like an Ink Brush does, then it would probably need that ink res effect in order to sustain itself a little bit longer. But I think it's a pretty simple effect and allows brushes to really play behind enemy lines more than they already could. And last, but certainly not least, we got the brand new bow class for Splatoon 3. I'm going with the assumption that there's going to be more than the default splat bow. I don't think it's that crazy of a thing to assume. So what could be something that a bow of a variety of different ranges could benefit from? And I think the obvious answer is no fall-off damage. We already know that bow shots arc, and they are a one-shot like chargers are, so having the ability to arc shots over walls is something that's really exclusive to this class, and it'd be a great advantage to really cement itself when being compared to chargers. So I think that would be a great thing for the class to have, regardless of range or the exact stats that could be given to other ones. And it's also something we haven't really seen yet, as pretty much every weapon has some sort of fall-off. Even weapons like Slosher have fall-off paint. So having a weapon that has absolutely no fall-off whatsoever could actually be really interesting. So that's what I would personally like to see for the bows. And there you have it, passive abilities for every weapon class. As I've stated before, I think it's a great way to set each class apart, give a little bit of buffs to all the weapons, keep things feeling fresh, and just in general is a pretty cool mechanic. that I think would be great to see in Splatoon 3. If you enjoyed today's video and want to see more concepts and other videos from me about Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3, then you can be sure to subscribe for more, and thank you all so much for watching. Have a great day.